Welcome to this week's episode of the Real Wealth Podcast. We are changing it up this week, and this week I'm joined by one of our clients. Well, actually two of them, the Mexican Cartel, Connie and Etan. These guys have been working with us since May of last year. This is the first time we put a spotlight onto one of our clients, and they have made massive moves in taking control of their financial future. Both of them used to work abroad. They've decided to completely redesign their life and put a huge amount of effort into building a profitable buy-to-let portfolio. They've went from 0 properties in their buy-to-let investment company to 16 now. They've got 12 in legals, first portfolio deal, making massive moves, really inspiring couple, and it's just incredible to see what they've managed to do in a short period of time working with us. So without further ado, let's get into the podcast and welcome to Connie and Etan. We are in the Virgin Hotel. This is our quarterly client meeting, and I'm lucky enough to be joined by two of our clients, known as the Mexican Cartel, Connie and Etan. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much for being back.
First podcast, completely green.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think I was excited to do a podcast with you guys because this year seems to be a big year for you in terms of the moves that you're making to change your life, I suppose, because that's what it comes down to when we talk about wealth and creating finances. It usually surrounds life and what your goals are for life, and money just becomes a tool of how to do that. So let's start from the start and talk about your backgrounds, what the two of you did that led you to this point, and how you met, I guess, as well.
So my background is I left school at 16. Mm-hmm. I couldn't wait to get out of school. I just was not a school person. I didn't like it. I didn't feel good enough, to be honest, was one of the big things. Like, it felt like there was all these groups, like you were the pretty group or the clever group, but then everyone else just sort of was kind of So I was really keen to get to work as soon as possible, and that's what I did. And then
I think that point on school is quite an important one, because we talk about school and the structures of school, and I was listening to, I think it was Kim Kiyosaki talking on social media the other week about schools and the structure, and the fact that it really makes people think that there's a right and wrong answer to everything. There's a structure that things have to be done by. It's very regulated, formulated. You're either right or you're wrong. You're good or you're bad. And that sort of black and white just doesn't exist in the real world. And I think a lot of people struggle with that from a young age, and certainly I did. I didn't like the idea of there can only be one right or wrong answer, and that is just not reality, right?
No. And unfortunately, it sticks with you. Like, there's things that stick with you, that you carry through, and you don't realize it. A teacher says something to you negatively, and at that young age,
you use that to define yourself.
Yeah, you're like,
rightly or wrongly.
Mm-hmm. You're like, well, the teacher said it, so it must be true.
Yeah.
Like, and you don't realize that that's one of your beliefs.
Yeah.
Starts to set in.
Well, I mean, these are very superior people within your formative years who have a lot of authority around you. So, you take what they say seriously. And it can really form not just, the choices you make in life, but the way that you view yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, definitely. And so I was really keen just to get out of school, and really I just wanted to have money.
Really?
Like, I just wanted to earn money and be able to do what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it. And so I left school and I started off as an office junior in a local accountant's office, just doing filing and making teas and coffees for the clients that come in, doing a bit of reception and things like that. And I stayed there for quite some time, and then I wanted to get into the city, into Glasgow City. And so I got a job in one of the big six at a chartered accountant's office. And I was...
Which one?
At that time, it was Coopers and Lybrand.
Right.
I think we changed to PricewaterhouseCoopers.
PricewaterhouseCoopers.
Down the line, but I was coming down there. And I just remember coming away from that interview thinking, I really want this job. I thought, this is my moment. And I got it.
Yeah.
And I was so excited. So I worked there for quite a few years. And then during that time, I started thinking, there has to be a wee bit more to life than this.
Yeah.
Like, I remember getting on the train every day at the same time.
Yep.
Like the whatever train, 7:34 or whatever it was. And you see the same faces.
Yep.
And I remember thinking, and then I'd get the same train home at night and you'd see the same faces. And everyone's walking the same path to the office or to whatever. And eventually I thought, this doesn't feel right.
You know, it's a funny concept to think about. You know, if your world is that, going back and forward, seeing the same faces, it's almost as if the rest of the world doesn't exist. You know, if there was a computer programmer programming everything, they would just have this little street for you, and everything else would be blurry because there's nothing out with it. And I think a lot of people feel that about their lives because, you know, it can just become so routine, so formulaic. And definitely when you're working for the bigger firms as well, your career can become quite formulaic in terms of the opportunities and stuff like that. You know,
but it goes back to what you were saying. I think school, I mean, the school, they're always teaching you to get a job.
Yeah.
Not to set up your business.
No.
So you're always looking to getting that next big job that is going to change your life, but it doesn't, because you're still waking up at the same time, going, using the train, coming back, going forwards, and then 10 years goes by, you're doing the same. I mean,
it is so easy for most people to go through their life not understanding that there is another way. And you know, in the way of entrepreneurship. And, you know, Laurie and I speak about this a lot because whilst his father was sort of an entrepreneur, he had his own business and all that, didn't really talk to Laurie much about it.
Yeah.
But the rest of our environment in the place that we grew up, there was no entrepreneurs. There was no people really running any businesses. You know, all we knew was get a job, go out there, make some money, work for someone. If you do well, you can progress. You know, you can get an increment of your salary every year if you're lucky, but that is where your earnings are capped. And, you know, where do you learn anything else? You know,
Exactly.
It's getting easier now for people that search it because we've got the World Wide Web, but not when I was younger and not when you guys were younger. You know, that information just wasn't there.
No, it wasn't the dumb thing. And I think if you did it back then, it was weird. You were looked upon as, well, that's weird. You know, what do you think you're doing?
Yeah.
People would question you far more and make you feel that you were going the wrong way.
Taking a risk, you know, how is this going to work? You know,
which I find quite interesting because, like, for example, you bet on having a university degree and it's going to come at a cost, right? And when you take that same money to set up your own business, I don't know why people just tend to see the business as a failure already without even...
It's just fundamentally now a much better bet to do something for yourself than invest in that college degree. Because, you know, I went through... So my brother is 12 years older than me. So when he left university and he got a degree from Edinburgh in politics and economics, that meant something. You know, he got a really good job out of it. It meant something. But fast forward 12 years to you know, when I was finishing university, it didn't. You know, everybody had a university degree. Everybody had a master's. It was the normal thing. And when I went to try and find a job as a chartered accountant or to train to be a chartered accountant, the first job I got offered was £11,000 a year. Now, okay, we're going back to 2005, 2006, but that was still no money back then. You know, it was less than what my mates that were apprentices or had went straight into trade were earning at that time. And I'd just done 4 years of university, and it was bizarre. You know, I actually had to turn that job down because it wasn't enough to pay the tiny mortgage I had on this little one-bed flat I had. So, you know, when you think about it in those terms, it's just like, people are so happy to rack up debt, keep them with the status quo because everybody's comfortable with that. But when you actually put it into perspective and look at the amount of money that's invested in that, you know, okay, in Scotland to a degree, higher education was part funded. You still had to put yourself through it. You still had to pay, you know, all your accommodation and travel and all that. But most countries it's not.
No, exactly.
And it's hundreds of thousands of pounds people can spend. When you think about what you can achieve in business with £100,000 or £200,000 worth of investment,
exactly,
you know, it's a no-brainer. You know, what is that university degree getting you out the other end? It's getting you in a queue, you know, that you may or may not.
It's just going to look where that takes you.
Yeah,
I guess to a point.
Yeah. So
I thought to myself, there's got to be more. There's something more to life. And so I decided I was going to go to Australia. And so I did at that time, well, I think it still exists, there was like a working holiday visa, it was called, and it was for a year. And so like you worked for a bit, then you travelled, and then you worked, that was the kind of premise of it. And so I did that. I took myself off to Australia because I thought the grass is greener. And it was, to be fair, for a while. And then after that, I had a friend who was in Hong Kong, so I moved to Hong Kong. But I had no money when by the time my year in Australia was up, I didn't even have that money for an air ticket to go anywhere, even to go home, to be honest.
Yeah.
Anyway, my lovely big sister lent me the money for the airfare to go to Hong Kong.
Oh, brilliant.
So I stayed there for a few years. And that was a brilliant time. Loved it. And then I moved around a wee bit after that to a few other countries. And then after a while, came back here. And my plan was kind of to stay. I bought a flat.
What was the decision point to come home? You know, I haven't experienced everything you would have naturally in Australia or Hong Kong.
It was more personal reasons that brought me back.
Because a lot of people, you know, once they've kind of tasted life abroad and, you know, me to a certain degree, you know, working in oil and gas, you're never in the most affluent of places. You know, there can be some pretty grim reality when you're on the forefront of oil and gas. But, you know, I did have time in Azerbaijan, which I loved. Fantastic country. Moscow to a less degree, you know, it was still really cool city and just very cold in the winter, and I always preferred to be in the sun, and you know, but and then laterally I was in Texas, and when I came back to the UK at COVID, really just during COVID, I really struggled. And I still continue to struggle with living in Scotland, even although my family are here, my kids are here, you know, I love the people around me, but the country I really struggle with, just because, you know, the weather, the economics, the government, the SMPs, you know, you can understand why people don't come back, you know, and it's probably more common to hear of people leave and not come back than people to leave and come back. There's usually extenuating circumstances. For me, it was COVID, and you know, obviously through that, Laurie and I built a business, so you know that changed the game a bit. But you made the decision to come back, and then
life circumstances kind of guided me to that point. And then, I mean, I loved being away, and I agree with what you say. I never really saw myself coming back.
Yeah.
For reasons similar to what you just said. Like, I think when you have been abroad, your perspective and how you see things is changed forever. And then when you come back to your home country, it's very different.
Yeah.
Once you've been exposed to such a huge variety and range of cultures and countries and things like that, it really, you know, it's a hugely positive experience.
Yeah.
And then when you come out of that and go back to what was your norm, it's not an easy thing.
Yeah.
And
it can be nice for a little while.
Well, that's the thing, but once that sort of novelty factor, it's a lot. But as it turned out, it wasn't to be forever, because I came back for a while and then I went abroad again because I got itchy feet, because I do get a bit bored.
Yeah.
I think I've got about a 3-year period where I
window,
and then I'm like, right, it's time to move on.
Back the case again.
And so then I got a job in Saudi.
Okay.
And I went over there with, like, I really didn't think about it until I was literally getting on the plane.
Right.
I just kind of went with the flow, not really realising the extent of what
you'd signed up to. I mean, I guess for anyone considering taking a job in Saudi Arabia, you're giving up quite a lot. I mean, I've heard from. I've been to Saudi a couple of times through my job, but never for any period of time, like weekends here or there. But I know the life there is not what we are used to.
No.
And keep in mind, this was like 5 years ago, right?
Yeah. So
it's changed a lot in 5 years.
Yeah.
It was way more conservative.
Doesn't it? Yeah. And it's probably 5 years ago, maybe even longer since I've been there. Maybe six or seven.
And cannot drive.
Yeah.
Those kind of
Well, and that's where it was going with this. You know, for anyone to make the decision out there, you're giving up a lot, and generally you're in camps, and you know that life is somewhat restricted. But for women, particularly, it must be tough.
Do you know, it's funny because I didn't do any research, which maybe was, I don't know, some people might say that was irresponsible. I remember when I told people at my old job in Glasgow that I was leaving and where I was going, one of my colleagues was horrified. She's like, Connie, don't you know what they just do women? And I was like, no. I mean, sometimes I think it's nice to maybe not know things, you know, because then you prejudge sometimes.
Sometimes not. And, you know, I go back to my first, I started with the company that I worked with in 2006. And the first week of my work, they said, right, we're sending you to Norway. There's a couple of things that need to be taken care of there, and it's a good learning curve for you. So out you go Norway. I'd only ever been on a plane to go on holiday to Spain or Salou or wherever my parents were going, and it wasn't that often, so I had no idea of going abroad. and 21-year-old Alex that never been abroad just thought everywhere that wasn't Scotland was warm. So I went to Norway in August, which was towards the end of the summer, thinking, oh, it's going to be beautiful. Didn't pack any jackets, literally just had t-shirts with me. And I had to go and buy clothes over there because I had no fucking idea what I was getting into. Yeah. But, so how was the Saudi experience?
You know, I had the best time. I understand, you know, people's perception of it, and I'm not saying that those elements are not there. But I felt the safest I've ever felt in any country, which is the strangest thing because you do live in the compounds, there's a lot of security, and...
But there's no crime in Saudi, right? Because they know the consequences of that.
Well, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
It was quite shocking to learn that just last week they were in the main square chopping off hands of a thief, right?
Yeah, but they're still out there doing that.
That still doesn't happen.
Yeah, when they told me, you want to come next week? I was like, no, fuck.
What?
But I mean, other than that, I mean, like, very safe.
Yeah.
Very safe.
And I had a wonderful, my boss was amazing. He did a lot for me personally, actually helped me out with a lot of a few tricky things. And my colleagues, and that's the thing, I think they see you as a woman in a country where it is quite challenging.
Yeah.
And they actually go above and beyond. Like,
support
they're the nicest people that I've ever met. And, you know, because some things are more trickier for women, they help you.
Yeah.
And they're always there for you. And, you know, it was lovely, I got to say. It felt like a real family.
Yeah.
Which you wouldn't get that feeling from the media or the press or...
No, you wouldn't.
Like that. So that... It was an eye-opener in terms of that they do generally look after you. And they are, I think, very aware of, you know, your situation in that country. And as a visitor, they want to make it a good experience for you.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
So the Saudi journey ended at some stage, I guess. So what was the driver there? Was that just the end of the job, or... You know,
Well, that's where I met my wonderful husband in Saudi. So that...
Are you working for the same company?
No.
So there was no HR firms involved?
No.
Different companies, but yeah, that's what we met.
So that's why it was one of the best experiences.
Yeah.
Because I got to meet my husband.
Yeah.
And which, honestly... so we met there and then we stayed for a wee while, but then... we decided it was time to move on.
Right.
I mean, there was a few things that...
Yeah, it circles back to having that perfect job, right? I mean, like... And we were having this conversation, like, what's the problem with having the job with Ukrainians? And the problem is that it's still a job.
Yeah.
You don't own your time.
No, you don't.
Yeah? And it doesn't matter how much money or how much good they're treating you, it's still a job. They're going to get rid of you anytime. They're going to... I mean, you felt like you touched that ceiling.
I mean, there's no scope, like, for women. Within the job that I was doing, like, you couldn't really move on.
No.
And if you were going to move on, your boss had to approve it. And they don't want to let you go.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to give it, because you know what to do, you know everything, and everything flows and everything's nice. And so they're keen to keep you. So it's a tricky situation, and it would take you a long time to try and escape their clutches.
I can get a bit morbid once you get to a certain stage within the organization, and I had a similar situation when I was in Texas. I was finance controller for this oil and gas company for the US, Canada, Mexico, Brazil, and Argentina, so Latin America. And that was the plateau for me, other than getting to VP of finance, then CFO level. So I knew my VP wasn't going anywhere anytime soon. So my only option was, are you going to die? You know?
How long is it going to take?
Can we move it on, please?
And I've never been one to move companies. You know, I've had 2 jobs my entire life. You know, I had a job in a restaurant cooking when I was at university, and then I started with this oil and gas company, and I was with them for 15 years before Laurie and I set up ourselves. Yeah. So I've never been one to move between companies. So I knew that probably wasn't going to be me. And in Texas, you know, even if I wanted to stay there, which I didn't, my options would have been really tough because my work visa was based on the company. So going to another company would have been challenging. So no, I entirely understand that ceiling that naturally comes, and also just lifestyle by design, right? Because you know, Saudi might have been great, but you maybe wouldn't have chosen to be there in the long term, and you don't have that choice with that job.
At the end of the day, I mean, I was there for money. Well, for experience and money. Yeah. And really nothing would have changed. So I would really have just been staying there for money. And as lovely as that is, and as helpful as that is, and as needed as it is, I think there comes a point where you have to look at it differently and say, well, you know, that's great. I'm earning a great salary and I've got all this money, or a good size of money, but what else have I got?
You're exchanging
away from that
time for money, and you're ultimately doing something. You're choosing to do something you wouldn't have done otherwise in exchange for money. And even when it's a lot of money, it's still a sacrifice, right? And you know, this I've spoke about this in the podcast before, and it was the big turning point for me was when, you know, I'd spent 5 years in Azerbaijan. We built this massive project. We'd done a $500 million project for BP, which me and my boss and a small team of guys had negotiated with the local government to use their facility and upgrade it, and executed and made something in the region of 20 million more than we should have on that project. And I got this like $12,000 bonus at the end of it. Yeah. And realised, more importantly than the money, realised that I've given up 5 years of my life. I've missed weddings, birthdays, you know, I've not been around for my family. I've given up a lot. And all I've done is receive. You know, it was a good salary, but the problem for most people that get a good salary is they're very good at spending the good salary. You know, the house has to be nice, the car needs to be a bit nicer, even though you're never there to enjoy it. You end up finding a way to spend it. So you've achieved very little there with that extra money. And you look back and say, right, what have I achieved for giving up all these things in life and sacrificing all these things? And the reality is you've not achieved very much. There's going to be no legacy there for you because it's, you know, it's a job. You know, if you're gone, they'll move on to the next guy, and, you know, they won't miss you, and they'll find someone else that can do it. You know, there's no mention of you in the history of this project, which was a historical oil and gas line to Europe. You know, I just thought, what is the point? I need to do something for myself here. I need to create some sort of legacy. And by that point in my early 30s, I was thinking about kids and settling down and having some form of legacy. And that was the real tipping point for me anyway. You know, and I think Laurie was at a similar stage at that point. So
I think as you do mature, if you like, like your priorities do change, and you look at things differently, and you become more aware of life and where you're heading, and the ultimate end, you know, is going to come at some point.
And don't get me wrong, in my 20s, doing what I did wouldn't change a thing. Yeah, you know, I loved it. You know, I spent time in Spain, Tunisia. Azerbaijan, Russia, you know, it was Norway for 2 years. I loved it. You know, it was great at that age, but it wasn't right for me in my 30s. And I seen fast forward into some of the guys that were there in their 40s and 50s, and they were 3 divorces in, and you know, all they had was the company, and they spent every penny they got just trying to make themselves feel a bit better for the mess that they created, you know, and it just wasn't me.
Yep.
So let's hear a little bit about your background. What brought you to Saudi?
Oh, oil and gas. I've always knew that I wanted to work abroad. I mean, I'm from Mexico, so well, I went to uni, get scholarship. Like, I literally check in all the boxes, right? And because that's what you do in Mexico. Like, that's literally, you have to have a career, a university degree if you want to do something decent out of your life. And I did, and my first job was in finance, which had nothing to do with my degree in industrial engineering.
Yeah.
But I just had to, because of life circumstances, I just had to basically suck it up. And 2 years later, I'm just browsing, and there's this job opening in oil and gas company, and I just said, you know what, why not? Yeah. Oil and gas always been in the back of my head, right?
Yeah.
I just said, why not? And then I had nothing to lose. And I remember that time clearly because, I mean, it was literally, you would do the exact same thing every Friday. Leave the office, go to the pub, get wasted. Yeah. And that was literally what you would do. Like.
Yeah.
And I remember that I was hungover that Saturday, terribly hungover, and the phone rings. And it was this HR lady about that job. And I was just like, compose myself.
Still on just like, well,
yes.
A few heavy coffees.
Ready for an interview on Monday? Yes, sure. And so, yeah, I mean, the rest is history. I mean, I went to this interview, got the job, literally resigned on a Friday, get started on a Monday. And I always wanted to work abroad. And 3 years later, as soon as I got that opportunity, I just jumped into it.
Yeah.
And I remember that time you were thinking about the decisions that you made on your life, and looking back, how they would impact it. There were 2 job offers, one for Odessa, Texas, and one for Al-Khobar in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
As a Mexican, I mean, you get used to having U.S. as your neighbor.
Yeah.
That's nothing really new. So I just was like, you know what?
You wanted the experience.
Let's go crazy. I didn't knew anything about Saudi Arabia, Middle East.
So you both went in blind.
Perfect, absolutely.
And
you went in blind, but you didn't come back happily.
At that time, I remember that my hiring manager in Saudi Arabia, he was like, do you have any questions? I'm like, yeah, well, I'm getting it too. And he is an Austrian guy, and he's like, I'm going to tell you the same thing that they told me. You're not going to a different country. You're coming to a different world. And he couldn't be more right. I mean, as soon as I stepped, if you landed in the Dammam airport, everything is just completely different. I mean, the lineups, the custom agent in the border, everything is just different. 5 hours to clear customs. I thought the system was solved. It turns out that was, that's normal because they all go to prayer and the smoke and the tea and, okay, fine. Then rather, oh God, you cannot do anything in front of anybody. So it was just crazy.
It's hard to run any sort of operation during Ramadan and that series. You know that you have to be. I mean, we used to run in Azerbaijan to a lesser degree. Obviously, it's a Muslim culture, but they're a little bit more liberal because of the Russians were there. They were part of the former Soviet Union, so we could almost deal with Ramadan, but you still had to be very careful because it's in the middle of summer. Most of the day, it's hugely, it's so hot, and the guys aren't taking water during the day, and you know it's a massive HSE night.
Everything shuts down. I mean, literally during Ramadan. I mean, and you as a foreigner, you're like, well, I'm not a Muslim, but you cannot eat or drink in public.
No,
you have to hide.
Well, that's the difference in Azerbaijan. That's not imposed on other people, but I fully expect that would be in Saudi.
In Saudi, where all the expats were hiding in my boss's office, used to have a sandwich. You're feeling like
Sure, like a criminal.
You're doing drugs or like what's going on?
What are you doing here? Just have
And-
water.
And yeah, I mean, 4 years in and through mutual friends, that's how we met.
Yeah.
And yeah, the rest is history.
So you were both 4 years in Saudi by that time?
Oh, I was 5.
Well, no, we met about a year and a half in,
Right. Year and a half in.
but 4 years in total in Saudi. And then we left. Well, I left.
You left, but you were still working there. Kind of back
No,
and forth.
that's where things got. I had one of my first live lessons. I loved this job, Alex. You have no idea. I was meant for this job, and I did a great projects. Yeah. And then the 2016 downturn in the oil and gas, and they start getting rid of people,
Yeah.
and it was me. So I had to go back to Mexico, and it was so, I don't know, I just felt heartbroken. No, betrayed, heartbroken, like everything.
I mean, I seen it during COVID with the company that I was working with, that I always felt like I was one of the company top performers, so you always felt insulated from it.
Exactly.
And during that period of COVID, and the company was struggling, it was clear. They were waiting on big projects that just weren't coming off because of COVID. The people they got rid of during that period, I never thought they get rid of, and that's when you really understand how cutthroat a job can be, because no matter how good you think you are and how safe you think you are, you can't protect yourself against a complete restructure of a market where they say, we might have a great bunch of people here, but actually we don't want to be in this market anymore.
Yeah.
See you later. There's just no, and it's almost laughable anytime someone says to me that being an entrepreneur and having your own business is inherently more risky than having a job. Even the best employees can lose their job through the period. There's very few people you hear about that haven't had an experience of losing a job at some stage.
Especially, And you you were a lifer.
Oh yeah.
Like, you loved the
Before that experience, I would be like, no, like you stay in the company, talk to your job, to your boss before quitting. Like I was like sold into the job.
Yeah.
And after that, I had this really good friend from Serbia, and he was like, I'm thinking on switching jobs, but my loyalty is with the company. And I was like, dude, fuck the company. Go to your next best bet. Oh yeah, but it's a good salary, but I don't want to leave them because they've been good to me. This. I don't care.
Yeah.
That's why there's a contract. Yeah.
It's such a fleeting thing, like I say with that job in Azerbaijan, the amount of money they made, you could say they were very good to me, because I had an apartment in Port Baku which looked on the sea. It was amazing. I had a driver, I had a cleaner, everything was taken care of.
Yeah.
But
That could be going like that though.
we made them $20 million more than the forecast in 2 years. So what they were paying and those benefits were peanuts in comparison to the benefit for the company.
Yeah.
And it all comes back to understanding your own worth and what you can achieve, because if me and a small team, including my boss, of guys that really know what they're doing, can create that, okay, you're operating under the umbrella of a company and their brand and reputation, so it's not that easy to go out and replicate that day one. You have to understand that, but you have the skills to be able to execute it. And beyond that, it's just a series of contracts, operational understanding and execution. It's not anything that's mind-blowing. So, yeah. So you found yourself back in Edinburgh.
Well,
Glasgow.
Glasgow. So after a lot of challenging times with losing jobs and
But that's when we got our first property.
and that's true.
In between, me losing that job in Saudi, we got the first property in
Mexico.
in Playa del Carmen in Mexico. And that's how it started.
Yeah.
Like that itch to have a property portfolio.
I mean, I had my flat that I was living in, and I when I went to Saudi, I rented that out.
Yep.
And I had some money sitting in a bank, and I'd bought another flat with no knowledge of property or zero, but I just felt that property was a good bet as a vehicle to put your money in, a safe bet, and you're going to get something every month. And that's as much as I knew. And so I had bought that. And so we had those two. And then, then we did the first Mexican deal, if you like.
Mexican deal.
Cartel.
Yeah. And then we did a few more after
and
that.
then I got another job, a better job back in Saudi.
Yeah.
And this was better because I was commuting. So 5 weeks in, 5 weeks off.
Yeah.
So I would spend my time off here. And everything was working great until
COVID came along.
March 2020.
2020.
2020.
That messed with a lot of people.
Shit.
But weirdly, at the time, it felt like the position that we were in was bad. But actually, it was the better one.
It was a great opportunity.
Because Etan had just literally arrived back for his days off. And we had gone on a little trip. And things were already shutting down. And we were like, will we go or will we not go? But we decided to go. We went to Portugal for a few days. And then while we were in Portugal, things really got scary.
Bad.
And the company said, you need to get back. Because if you don't get back within 48 hours, we don't know when you can come back. So we were on trying to look at flights back to here, Glasgow, Edinburgh, whatever. Logistically, it wasn't possible. And so you weren't able to go back. And we were thinking, oh my God, how's this going to work out? What are we going to do? Because you're not earning money. I'm not earning money. Like, we have no money coming in. And who knows when you're going to work, and who knows. And it was the biggest blessing. It was
the biggest blessing because in that meantime, we got other 2 more properties on the Mexican side. But we were never sure that we were able to live off property because you had a good job, right?
Yeah.
That keeps the lifestyle. It's not the property.
Yeah.
So COVID forced us to look into the property part, and now you have to chip in.
Yeah.
And they did.
Yeah.
And it was like we were literally forced to look into that option because I was stuck here in Glasgow because of COVID. And I couldn't work because at the time I was under a tourist visa. So it was a very complicated situation, as everybody had at that time. But then I was forced, literally again. I mean, life forced me to get the UK residency visa.
Yeah. Yeah.
And borders were still closed. My boss was, where are you coming back? And even if I want to, my working visa is off, so I have to renew it. Embassies are closed. It was
everything closing though.
Yeah, it was no.
Nearly 2 years.
And until it was 1 week, if I would have gone back, I would have a job and
everything would have been different.
Would be sitting here.
Yeah,
probably.
I mean, we never went for the UK visa because it's more than 5 weeks, so it wouldn't allow me time to get my passport back and this.
Yeah,
but we were forced to do that, and that's when we start seeing, property, it's a very safe vehicle.
Yeah, you start.
I mean, it literally saved us.
Yeah,
during that time. I mean, I'm not actually too, because we were not prepared. We were not financially prepared for no income coming in.
I think it's just that understanding that, income can be shut. There are circumstances that can happen that can just shut that income off. Whether it's losing your job or a world event like that. I was quite fortunate during COVID that I was still working for this American company, supposed to be in Texas. I came home here on the 14th of March 2020. And I remember sitting in the hotel, the hotels are really strange in Texas. They're not proper hotels. They've got like little kitchen areas you can go and make your own stuff, but you don't really, that's really horrible. I hate them. Yeah, and then they do breakfast in the morning, but it's like they throw out some cereal and then there's some microwave sausage thing. It's hideous. But they're all like that, even the good ones. But I remember sitting in this breakfast thing, like a day before I was going back, and I was getting calls saying things again. What's going on with COVID? It's getting a bit crazy. And literally there was like Trump on the TV over there, but there was no sound on it, and I wasn't really listening. And I kind of think about it like Armageddon was hitting around me, and I had no idea what was going on. I was just so, because I was not long into this job, I was just so focused on it and thought, right, I'm going home on Thursday or whatever it was. I need to get all this stuff done before I go, and then I'll jump on the plane. And there was a bit of chatter about it, but not much.
No,
I got on the plane and I never got back.
I thought it was you.
But I was fortunate enough that I was in finance, so I could do my job remotely for, they put up with me doing it all the way till like November 2021. And then they said, right, get on a plane, move to Texas, or there wasn't an or, but it was an implied or.
Yeah.
And I actually think, and that goes back to my previous comments, I think they wanted rid of me by that point, because I'd done quite a lot, even remotely, to improve this, because it was chaos when I went in. And I got down to a point where I was doing maybe 5 or 6 hours a week to basically do my financial presentation to the board at the end of every month.
Yeah.
And that became my job, because everyone else was sort of, they'd fired some people and moved some people around, and I don't think they needed me anymore.
No.
So I think they wanted me out anyway, and they knew I wasn't coming to Texas. But
yeah.
That whole thing was chaos, but it led to a beautiful thing for both of us, by the sounds of it. You guys discovered the power of property investment, and certainly I did as well through that period. And you learned. I guess it must have been quite liberating as well for both of you, because you both come from that oil and gas background where it's not just about the ties of having a job, which for 99% of people is what they have. That's just normal, but it's extrapolated when you work in oil and gas, because you're giving up a lot more for that job, because you're away for a long extended period of time. Even when you weren't going to Saudi, you were still having to deal with the fact that your partner was for 5 weeks at a time, and then
it was like 2 different lives you were living.
Yeah,
you had your life on when you were on your own, and then the life completely switched when you came back.
And that can be really hard to adjust to. I mean, my marriage didn't survive for a lot of reasons, but that was one of them.
Yep.
The fact that you're used to living separate lives. So that it's that combination of being freed of the ties of that, but also understanding the passive nature of property investment. The fact that rent can come in every month, and your time's freed up. You get to decide what you're doing with your day, and that can be quite liberating, I guess.
I don't have to go to the airport.
Yeah.
I don't have to take the red eye to Amsterdam. I don't have to endure the shitty food in the plane.
Yeah.
I mean, and the best part, I don't have to Skype with her.
Yeah.
50% of the communication on the Skype, can you hear me? See me? I cannot see you.
It's not working.
I'll call you back.
Yeah.
And the frustration, because I'm in the middle of the desert, and it's changing my life. I haven't gone into Skype because of it.
Yeah, and you're quite happy to put that behind you.
And it's been great. I remember back then, before COVID started, and we were thinking about, let's do property and this and that, but you're so hung up on the lifestyle that your salary is providing, that
there's a fear.
You're just following the carrot.
Yeah.
You're not focusing on the right things.
Yeah.
And remember that we would say, no, it's not going to work, and we cannot do this, we will need more money. We didn't know how to do it. I mean, of course, when we understood the rude ways of properties, not another world. I mean, a million worlds just open.
It was the same for us when we first discovered this stuff, right? It's a different world of what's possible in terms of scale and, passive income, and, it can be incredible, and it can achieve great things over time, So, and I guess that's a good point to kind of go on to talk about the stuff that you guys are doing now, because you have made fantastic moves in property. You've not been working with us for that long.
Not really.
And, the progress an outside perspective, because I'm probably not as involved in a lot of the stuff you guys are doing day to day as Connor, or the guys that are at coalface with the deals. But what I can see is massive progress. And it might not always feel like that, I guess, because you're on the sticky end of it, and I've been there, believe me. But several individual deals, 4 or 5 individual deals.
4 individual.
4. Well, 3. The fourth one is
still in the pipeline. Like Glen Acre, right? I'm familiar with that one. It's been dragging its heels.
The longest one. Deal of history, but
I wouldn't say that. We've got a few that are ticking along. We actually started a portfolio acquisition 2 years ago that hasn't finished yet, but through the process we've got another $1 million or so off the deal, so it's fine. But and more recently the portfolio deal, right? And this is a beautiful thing. I love this about property investment. This is the thing that most people don't get with it. The beautiful thing that is buying portfolios, because everybody's heard about BRR, right? You buy, refurb, refinance, try and take out as much of your money as possible, if not all, onto the next deal, and you can build a portfolio over time quite effectively doing that, but it takes a long time. Mm-hmm. The difference between that and scaling quickly is portfolio acquisitions, and that's really the one thing that Laurie and I figured out quite early, was how to do those types of deals. Mm-hmm. But it's just understanding how many people are in a position to be able to do a portfolio deal. Not many people have the finance, the understanding of how to get it over the line, unless you've got serious money behind you, or you have the backing of a finance company. You know how that structure works. There's not many people in the game, so it's not something you can go on Rightmove and see hecking about, But they do always come with a discount, and that's the important thing to understand, because nobody generally is buying 10 or 20 properties that have some sort of single asset value without some sort of discount. Mm-hmm. So, it can be beautiful from a discount perspective.
Fine. Next day,
refinance can happen much quicker, because you're not dealing with the same lending restrictions you do on an individual property. You've got the benefits of multiple dwellers relief. You're not having to pay the ADS if it's 6 or more properties.
And I've seen it, you have more control of the process in itself, because the valuation and it's more control process on our end, because when you're doing an individual deal, you're just at the mercy of the mood of the valuator and everybody else, right? And the portfolio just seems
it's more control.
Everything is just like a dream, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we've found over time you can have more control on the entire process, from acquisition and aligning the finance, because it's a bigger deal. The banks are more interested. They want to support it, and they want to see the revenue come in, and the exit becomes more interesting for the surveyors, because again, the bigger the portfolio, the bigger the fee for them. They're more willing to engage with you on the front end and give you some sort of step to hint over whether or not the exit is going to work that you've planned. Mm-hmm. So you guys are on track with deals that are in Leo's for 15 properties, is it? Thereabouts?
For the portfolio?
No, in total.
It'll be 16.
16. Fantastic.
End of January 16.
So that's within what period?
May? We did it this turn?
May.
Well, we signed up May.
7, 8 months.
It's incredible. You guys, we're obviously here to support you, but making the moves is the hard bit, right? I mean, getting your head in the right space to make these moves. You use every stage you've went into it.
It's funny because it doesn't always feel like that.
No.
Sometimes it feels like you're not really doing very much.
Yeah.
Because there's sort of peas and shops, isn't there?
Well, you do a deal, it's exciting, the deal's coming. And then it's 3 months later, the deal's still not closed, and you're like...
Others out there. And you think, should I be doing more? Should there be something? Am I missing something? Or, but it's just the process, isn't it? But when you're in it, it feels very different, as you know.
Well,
sometimes.
Our first big deal was the 83... I always get this wrong whether it's 82 or 83, but I think it was 83. properties in Lanarkshire, and we agreed the deal with this crazy Irish guy that owned them at Strathclyde Park, which is incidentally right next to my house now. I didn't even know when I was at the time when I first met him, but now it's right next to my house. In I think the January, and he just went in and said, you get 20% discount off it. If you want any more, you can just fuck off. That's the deal.
Yeah.
That was it done. And it took until the October to close it. And it felt like forever. You know, it was this huge deal. And I don't allow myself to get excited about deals anymore because you just don't know until it's done.
I'm the same. Etan's like, we've got 12, and I'm like, well, we don't. Until it's...
So we're in the process of doing the biggest deal we've ever done. It's over 12 million worth of assets. I'm not even thinking about it until I'm signing papers and the legals are about to finalise and that being said though, we've had more individual deals fall down than portfolio deals. The only portfolio deal we've ever had that's fallen down, including clients and ours, is this portfolio that we're about to buy that's worth 12 million.
Okay.
It fell down a year and a half ago, didn't work out, and now it's come back. So technically, you know, we've still not had one that fall down. So it is incredible, like the ups and downs of getting one of these deals done can be a lot more extreme than an individual property, but generally you get over the line, you know.
Well, that's good to know. I guess there's more at stake, isn't there?
Yeah.
With the portfolio deal.
Oh, much more. And
the incentive to keep it going
for everybody, right? Because everybody's racking up legal fees, and it's the buyer that's racking up survey fees on the front end, but the seller's racking up legal fees.
Yeah.
You know, and most lawyers are going to take some sort of advance from the seller on that scale of a deal.
Yeah.
You know, so everybody's on the hook for it. I guess the question becomes, you know, fantastic result between now, from May and now. What's the plan? What are you guys aiming for as a goal in mind, and what does, you know, the peak look like for you guys?
We had a number, but I'm not working with numbers anymore.
No.
When we first joined with you guys, we kept talking about a number. I want to have this number in the first year and whatnot. And I just think, I don't want a number. I just know that we just have to keep pursuing it as we are, as aggressively and as consistently as we are. And that number is it's just going to keep...
It's going to move. Yeah. It was exactly.
And it's nice to have, I guess, a number in your head, maybe. But I think sometimes that then kind of stops you a wee bit. Like you think, I've got my 12, then I don't need to push it.
Well, Laurie Duncan would say your number's not big enough. And that's the thing with you know, because when in our first year we got to 40, and then we said, okay, right, well, you know, it would be an obvious target to say, okay, let's get to 80 next year. But then, you know, we said, okay, well, what's going to move the dial? What's going to change things? And I think we set a target of 300, which is ridiculous. But then you have to completely rethink about what you do to get to that target.
Yep.
So with a different goal, you've got a different plan. And even if you fall short of 300, which we did, we got to like 210 or something like that. But we never would have got to 210 properties in that second year without that insane, ridiculous target. And then at some point, I think Laurie set a target of 1,000, but we've subsequently, you know, this deal that we've got going on in legals will take us to 350, well short of our 1,000, which was a 5-year target or something. I'm not saying we're not going to get to 1,000. I think what I've realised though is, understanding the peaks and troughs of the market, you need to change your strategy a little bit, you know, because we sold some off at the end of last year knowing that the market was going to take a downturn, and knowing that was going to be really good for us. We wanted to bank some cash to be able to take advantage. So you have to play the game a bit, and putting a fixed number on it maybe doesn't make sense, but the important thing is the goals are there to push you forward and stretch you.
You know,
I think the number starts to lose importance.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're putting everything into it, it's not about how many properties you have, but it's how far we can get
with that.
I mean, with this drive, because probably with this drive, 100 is going to sound short or not, but I don't know. That's what we want to discover, right? Like, just keep making moves consistently, and just see how far we can get.
Yeah.
I mean, because everything around property is just, I mean, at least personal. I mean, I just enjoy it so much. Like, you get this rundown property, you done it up to a livable standard, and once you see the great job that has been done on the refurb, and just that a nice family is going to live there. Yeah. I mean, that's just, wow.
Yeah.
But that's pretty cool.
There's a lot of satisfaction.
There's a lot of satisfactions, and of course, there's the financial side of it, because in 2 years I can refi and take more money out of it and this and that or whatever. But it's the whole experience in itself. And before, like 2-3 months ago, we're gonna have 20 this year. And then the 12 portfolio comes in and it makes you 20.
Look too small.
You're like,
so if you do the math, I mean, it should be 35 or so, but let's see how far we should this year.
And I guess a lot of this comes back to not how many properties you're trying to achieve. It's not how much pounds and pence you're trying to get in the bank every month. It comes back down to the life that you want to create for yourself. And that leads me to my final question of, what does real wealth mean to you?
I would say so many things probably, but to me it's freedom. I know that's quite a bog standard answer that so many people say.
Yeah.
But I don't, I have a real particular view in life that I think we're here to live as free a life as we can, and not be constrained as much as possible, like in all aspects.
I think most people understand the strive for freedom.
Yeah.
What most people don't get to is the second most important step of understanding what freedom in life means to them and what their life looks like when they have the choices to do whatever they want to do.
People find that scary, and so they would rather stay in a more controlled.
Yeah, because the structures you don't have to think about.
Because they don't need to think. Whereas, if I don't do anything one day, I'm okay with that. Like if I have a lazy day, it's okay.
What's your choice?
But it's my choice. I'll make it up the next day or whatever it is. But I want to be able to say to myself, I'm doing nothing today. If that's what I choose.
There is a massive, and I'm realising this more about myself as I grow older, but there's a massive challenge of being a human being is that naturally we're quite habitual. And happiness and how we define happiness is quite closely defined and extrapolated by differences within our life, variables, that things that, they say if you go on holiday, people are at the peak enjoyment within 48 hours of their holiday, then it starts to dip. And the average person is using words to describe their favourite part of the holiday, like the first time, and it's that experience of having your best day ever. If you had the same day every day, you'd still get bored of it.
Yeah.
And, as a human being. So it's battling the habitual nature of us as human beings versus our need to, have enjoyment, and, it can't be replicated over the same time. So I genuinely think this is one of the hardest challenges as a human being. Most people never even get to the point where they get to think about it because they're just in daily grind. They're on that train, they're seeing the same faces, they're going to the same office. There's nothing to think about there. But for those of us who do try and stretch ourselves and create that wealth and freedom in life, you then have the next thing of figuring out, what does it mean?
Like, what am I going to do with that freedom? Like, you need to, like, you want to make good use of it, right? Because you've worked hard to attain it and to get yourself to that point. So then some people think, they put the pressure on thinking, right, I need to be doing something really significant or amazing with all this freedom, but not necessarily.
No.
Like, I think life is all about experience as well. Like, you want to experience so many things. You love your running. Like, you want that time to do all the races that you want to do, as one example.
Yeah.
You know, and I just think you want to have the ability to do as much as you can.
Mm-hmm.
I think to me, it boils down to do what you want, when you want, with whom you want.
Yeah.
Like, that's how I would phrase what I'm after.
And having the time to figure out what that is.
Yeah.
So,
Than what it means.
And that can change at any point, and that and
Oh, by a very nature.
but it's but you're able to accommodate it
Yeah.
as well. And for your family or friends and whoever wants to join you on the crazy ride, you know, like, give that back to them as well, in some shape or another.
Yeah.
I think we've been told a incorrect story about how we're meant to live our life.
Oh, 100%, but that's also defined by the needs of the economic growth of the country and what the government. You know, there's no other incentive for them than to teach us those things, to keep us in the system and employees, and you know, it's just the unfortunate nature of the world. But opening your eyes to it was the first step.
Yeah, no, definitely.
So, thanks a million for this. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, and honestly, it's been a pleasure to see the progress that you guys have made in the last little while. It makes our job so much easier when you guys are buying into the mindset stuff, making the moves, and you know, you have to this point been pretty fearless in the moves you have made. So, well done. Yeah, me too.
Thank you very much.
All right, this has been the Real Wealth Podcast. I'm Alex Robertson, and thanks for joining us on this wealth journey.